Hey everybody, how you doing? It's Sam here with the Craft Lyfe. I'm here with my Jedi home brewer, Mr. James. We're going to be brewing for our first competition. So we're going to be actually creating an IPA. James is going to go through the whole recipe real quick. We're going to show you how we're brewing it, what we're brewing with. Let's talk about the whole brewing process.
We decided to go with a IPA, New England style, so it'll be a little bit juicy. A lot of late hop additions. We're just going to do a little bit of half ounce of brewing hops up front, and then it's going to be essentially late hop, whirlpool, and double dry hopping. From the grain, it's basically going to be Epiphany malts in North Carolina. We were able to get their foundation base malt, 13 pounds of the foundation pale two-row, pound of flake oat, and a pound of flake wheat, which give out that nice balanced mouthfeel to it. We're using basically purified water that we're going to add some salt additions. So it's going to be about a teaspoon each of the gypsum and calcium chloride.
All right, so what are we going to be brewing on?
We use a system that's the Anvil Foundry. It is a 10-gallon electric brewing system. The Foundry is you do your mash and your boil in the same kettle, and the sparge method is used at the end of the mash. You'll basically sparge in about a gallon of water, but at the whole time we're going to be using a recirculating pump, and that recirculating pump will help really just make sure that there's an even flow of the water through the grains so we can get maximum extraction.
Go ahead and add our first salt addition.
So this is going to add calcium and it's going to add chloride, which will really help get better extraction from the whole mash process.
Our next salt addition.
This is the gypsum calcium sulfate. It's adding calcium, it's adding sulfate. Sulfate is a key mineral to help get the right profile for the type of beer that we're making. So the temperature for the mash is the ideal temperature between 150, 154. We look for 152 to get the maximum extraction of the starches into sugar. So that way you have this nice sugary wort that you can brew with. So by sparging at 170 degrees, that's a temperature that now will denature the enzyme, so there will be no more conversion coming from those starches. And at the same time, that temperature will pull all the sugar that's already been sitting inside that grain. And that way it flows nicely through the basket into the boil kettle, and then we can go right there into boiling. You got to have the right temperature and the right pH to get the maximum efficiency.
All right, so he's going ahead and takes out 1 gallon.
Yes.
And that 1 gallon is going to be used for sparging. Brewing process normally takes anywhere between 4 to 6 hours. Then you have cleanup. So it's going to be a little bit of a day for us. It is time to mash it. So what kind of grain is this that we're putting in first?
This is the base malt, two-row, pale two-row malt. So this is our flake oat and our flake wheat.
So what are you doing now?
So now we got to get this into the water. So right now it's sitting inside the grain basket. We just got to get the water into the grain basket so that way it starts submerging. Then we can begin the whole mashing process. So I'm just stirring it up, letting it sink to the bottom.
So how long is this mashing process going to take?
Probably close to an hour.
So what ABV are you trying to get with this one?
So on the spec sheet, I think we were looking at like anywhere between 6.5 to 6.7.
Look at that.
These are rice hulls. And yeah, they're pretty much used just to create a filter and get all the liquid away from the grain. There will be some flavor that comes from it.
Hey everybody, taking a quick break during the mashing process. It's a 60-minute process. So during that, I just want to talk about what is the Craft Lyfe. So the Craft Lyfe is basically marketing powerhouse for our home brewers, brewers, and brewery owners. We help you guys get branded. We have a few brewers under our belt. Jim is our first shout-out brewer right now under the Craft Lyfe, and we're entering this competition together. I'm actually helping in this process of brewing this with him. Yeah, man, the Craft Lyfe is all about helping you elevate your game to get your craft noticed. And we're going to be helping brewers, brewery owners, and home brewers with understanding what their craft is and how they can elevate it to the next level. So we have approximately 20 minutes left in the mash.
Yeah, so what we're doing is we're raking the upper third of the grain bed. That's the method that the Foundry recommends doing. I've been using it that way. If you do another starch test, you can see the color right there. So when we do another one, we'll get a better sense as to where we are. So you see how there's a little bit of a color change? Mm-hmm. Not much. The last time it was like black. Right now, it's slightly blue. Still a little bit of starch in there, so still some more conversion. Our pH is like right above 5.3. I can do another test now.
And what pH are we looking for?
So 5.2 would be ideal. I dropped 3 milliliters of hydrochloric acid in there to help bring the pH down. And just wait till it sits. It's in the range. So like 5.2 to 5.4 are all the acceptable ranges. This is sitting just above 1. I'll do about half of it. I won't do it all. So we're just gonna let this thing run for like another 15 minutes. And we'll do a check at that point. And we will be probably at that stage really close to finish. When we did it before, it turned black, which means there still starts to convert. Here, you're not seeing that it's really changing much. It's like a little bit, and barely. So we're pretty much gone to the point where we've gotten to.
So this right here is going to tell us.
It'll read how much sugar you have inside here. So
All right, so you're just putting basically
just a few drops in it. Take a look and read. And so it is telling me it is at, so we're at 106.7 right here. So I think we're going to be pretty much in the range that we want to be when we get to the final gravity.
nice. And the key thing to good brewing is making sure you're taking really good notes.
So temperature inside should be where it needs to be.
So what's really cool with this is that he's really right now just separating the grain from the control.
Yeah. And as you can see, looks like we had some pretty good
Extraction.
yeah.
Looks pretty good.
So I'm gonna go get the sparge water.
All right, so right now we're pouring that 1 gallon that we took from the mash in the beginning.
Just doing it slowly and just trying to cover the grains equally.
All right, so from this part moving forward, what's going to give us the clue that this is finished?
It's just gonna run through. There's really nothing else to do. If you were actually doing like the full process of where you're using a hot liquor tank to sparge in, then you would have to take your readings to see where your gravity's at and then determine, okay, is your wort at the right level? Because we're using this wort and we've already measured where it is, we added another gallon of water to it, so it'll probably drop it a little bit. But then what's gonna happen is we're gonna boil off a lot of water when we do the boil, which we're setting up for. And that's gonna then bring back some of that. So you're kind of seeing how the balance of the water level and the sugar that remains is what will ultimately be what our yeast is going to eat and eat our beer. So we're sitting around 1.067.
So we started off with how many gallons?
Total water was 7.5 gallons.
7.5 gallons to make a 5-gallon beer.
Correct.
What do we got here?
So this is Star Sands. This is typical sanitizer of choice for homebrewers. It's an acid sanitizer. 1 ounce goes with 5 gallons. So you just have this way of squeezing the bottle in to get your fluid up, get it to that 1 ounce level. 1 ounce per 5 gallons. Mix it up.
Everything is about procedural over here. So you don't want to waste time. You kind of want to multitask. So we're getting kettle to the boil temperature so we can go ahead and start our boil. And while we're doing that, we kind of prep everything else. All right, so we're adding our first hop addition.
Yeah, so we're going with Falconer Flight. It's a bittering hop, 1/2 ounce, because this beer we want to have a lot of hop flavor and hop aroma, but we're not looking for a lot of hop bitterness. So this is a good amount of bittering where you're still going to have it on the palate.
So what we got going on here?
So now we're in the late stages of the boil.
How much time has passed?
55 minutes has passed, and we're going to be adding Simcoe hops, 2 ounces. So this is going to be aroma hops. This is not bittering at all because of the time that it's going in. And we're going to put 2 ounces in. And this is where this particular beer that we're doing starts to get really hop heavy. So when we are finished in the next 5 minutes, we will whirlpool, turn off the heat, and then we're going to throw in Citra, Equinox. Yeah, no, it's 2 more ounces at that stage.
So our 60-minute boil is over, and we're adding our last hop addition. We call this the whirlpool.
Yeah, so basically what happens here is this is what they call the hot break. And by doing a whirlpool, everything that's like now starting to float in solution, the proteins and things like that, they're going to start collecting and gathering and falling to the bottom. So we're doing Citra, 1 ounce Equinox, 1 ounce of Citra. This is all aroma at this point.
So what we're doing right now?
So basically we're going to let this still sit for a little bit. And then we're going to begin chilling it. You can see the temperature starting to drop right on it. It's below 200. So just by turning it off, it'll actually probably about 5 minutes.
What was this coil that you placed inside of it?
Okay, so that's the immersion chiller. The immersion chiller is going to run cold water through those coils. Those coils will then get really cold, similar to like how air conditioning works, and it will reduce the temperature of the water. I'll let it get down to about 100 degrees, and then I'll do the last 30 degrees using the ice bath immersion method. We like our yeast working somewhere between the high 60s, low 70s, and every yeast strain is a little bit different. We have a juice yeast that is going to give off this like juicy type of flavor to it. And it's very happy around 70. So we want to get this down to about 70 degrees, pitch the yeast, and let the yeast do the work.
Perfect. And you see, that's why I call him the wizard. We chilled the wort down to as low we possibly can. The wizard came up with this little crazy concoction, which is awesome.
It's going through the immersion chiller. Immersion chiller is really cold right now. Probably about 10 more minutes. This thing's going to drop this thing closer to 80 degrees.
Process is almost done. Once we get this wort down to the temperature, we're going to transfer it into that bad boy. Pitch the yeast. Goes in the fridge. Mission complete. All right, so right now we're getting our yeast ready to pitch.
Doesn't really give a good description, so I guess the packaging, but these are the type of yeast that give off a very good fruity aroma, which goes well with the style of beer that we're brewing. So that's why we chose this one. Yeast will eat sugar, it will pee alcohol, and fart CO2.
And that's why I call him the wizard. This guy knows his stuff. This little setup right here really saved time. We're at
like 74.
74. Now it's perfect time for us to set up to
Yeah.
transfer.
So we'll give it like a couple more degrees to 70, and then I'll just turn it off.
All right, we're setting up for the transfer. So he stopped the little fish pump inside of here. You help you got that strong dude. All right, so walk us through what you got going on.
So this is now time to transfer. So I have a whole bunch of hoses, my Frankenstein blow-off system. I've got my hoses that we're going to use to connect the pump.
So right now he's connecting the bottom of the brew kettle into the pump.
We had that problem once before.
You don't want to put it on the top part. This is the part where your beer can get messed up. And that's why he's making sure that everything is sanitized.
So I think I'm actually going to just dump a little bit. And you can see it's not very clear. And now we will ask the pump to do the work.
And now we're transferring the beer from here to this guy. All right, folks.
Now it's time to just get the yeast in there.
Now he's going to seal the tune.
So it's just basically it's where the blow-off hose is going to attach.
What's going to happen with that blow? What is that for?
So when we were talking earlier about yeast, so the yeast is going to spend the first 4 to 12 hours eating up everything and reproducing. Once they're done with their cellular respiration and reproducing, the next step is they're going to start eating all the sugars as well. We're going to screw this in here. So here's the blow-off tube. And once the CO2 builds up, it's just going to push out, and we're going to place this into that jar with sanitized fluid. And it's just going to be like that. There's going to be the high Carousel, which is going to be working a lot, functioning a lot. It's going to be like this pulse that you see coming out of the fermenter, like just every few seconds. It'll happen for a couple of days, and then it'll back off as the yeast starts to slow down. But that's what happens during the active fermentation stage, which can take anywhere between 1 to 5 days. It all depends on what you're making and what kind of yeast you're using. So this is pretty much the final steps of what we need to do. So this is a freezer, and basically what I will do is I'll put the fermenter inside the freezer, put the airlock inside, and then we can control the temperature of the freezer with what they call this. The inkbird overrides the thermostat, and you set the inkbird to what temperature you want the freezer to hold itself at. And that's essentially how you control temperature. What will essentially happen from here We have the tilt hydrometer, which will send a signal to the foam via Bluetooth. We can monitor active fermentation. And then once we realize that fermentation is done, we can then do what they call diacetyl rest. That's where diacetyl gets released into the fermented beer, but the yeast will then reabsorb that diacetyl, so it's not an off flavor that exists inside your beer. From there, you cold crash it and then transfer it to your serving. We're going to be using kegs, so we're going to transfer to a keg, and then we're going to let it store in a keg for a couple of weeks. And yeah, about 4 weeks from now, we're going to be at prime time, ready to drink this beer.
Yep. Friends, that's a wrap. It's been a long day. It's going to sit in here for the next couple of weeks. Then we're going to transfer into the keg and ready for our first festival. Hopefully we do well. Hopefully the beer tastes great. And once again, we'll be at the Curated Craft Carousel. It's happening September 5th. Make sure you guys are there to support the Craft Lyfe, myself, and our Jedi over there, home brewer. And we'll catch you guys next time.